Delta Airlines putting a price on their employees' lack of vaccinations to the tune of $200. That's a monthly surcharge for any worker who remains unvaccinated and the potential to lose pay protection for missing work because of COVID. So for more on this, we're joined on the KCBS Ring Central Newsline by Paul Seegert, managing partner at PCS Advisers. That's a California-based healthcare benefits firm. So, Paul, I'm thinking this could involve unions, maybe even a court case, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all the employees are going to get on board with this because they do so far have a pretty high vaccination rate.
They do, and Delta has less unions to contend with than some of the other airlines, probably why they're taking this step a little more aggressively. And so far, the feedback from their union has been that this doesn't require negotiation, since there is precedent for this kind of thing for other high-risk activities like smoking.
So from the healthcare benefits perspective, do you see other big corporations, big companies doing the same?
I think it's definitely possible. They're leading the way. We've been getting a lot of questions in the last 30 to 60 days as to whether or not this would happen, and they're kind of the first big national name that we're seeing do it. But I think others will follow suit. If we look at the healthcare system in June and July, we spent as a system $2.3 billion on hospitalizations for COVID, almost exclusively for unvaccinated people. So there is clearly evidence that it's causing extra cost to the system that is now preventable.
And Delta says every time one of their employees gets COVID, they spend about $40,000 in health care on that. So this surcharge, and that's what they're calling it, a surcharge, I mean, it's very possible that other companies could look at this as a way to underwrite some of those health care insurance costs.
That's right, and I think they see it as an alternative to doing a mandate. It still gives people a choice to not get vaccinated, and this will help subsidize the regular testing and the PPE and the hospitalizations and other costs to the health plan for those employers.
You said that the precedent has been set when it comes to smoking. How well has this worked as an incentive?
It's worked. It's worked for sure. In fact, when you look at this case, they track their vaccination rate, and as soon as they made the announcement that this was coming down, the very next day they had 3 times as many people getting their first vaccination as they had prior. So it definitely, we do find in our industry that people are motivated pretty heavily by their wallet.
Well, what about passengers? I mean, obviously the airlines have seen a little bit of a slowdown again in booking since this variant. Do you think passengers are going to feel any safer if they know that the cabin crew or ground agents or the pilots are fully vaccinated?
It is something that I think will have an effect, and different airlines are handling it in different ways. You've got Southwest and American, and it does tie into how strong their unions are in some cases, but in those 2 airlines, they're strongly encouraging but not mandating or putting a surcharge, at least to this point. United and Hawaiian have put in mandates, so you would know that you're getting onto an airline where virtually all the workers are vaccinated, and now we have this surcharge with Delta. So I think it will factor into some of the decisions that people make as they continue to navigate how to try and live as normally as possible.
You'd mentioned early on that Delta didn't seem like they had unions to contend with, but there must be other sectors where the unions might put up a fight for this. There are.
And I think what we'll see with those employers is that they'll give these employees options where you either submit to testing multiple times weekly or get vaccinated, so that it becomes inconvenient but not a requirement. And there are lots of industries where if they didn't have the fear that they wouldn't be able to staff their facilities, ironically, healthcare falls into this category. If they didn't have a fear that they wouldn't be able to staff their facilities, they would mandate it right away. But they have real concerns and legitimate concerns that they could lose a good portion of their workforce and then put undue stress on those that remain.
What I'm curious about, though, is the airline saying that they're not going to let you take your paid sick leave or give you the pay protection, though, if you do get this and have to take time off. I mean, can they really tell you what and how you're going to use your sick time?
I think that's where we're likely to see more legal fights to see this thing play out. We are watching some lawsuits right now because I think there's another element to this conversation. There are some folks who say, some employees that say, hey, I shouldn't be required to get a vaccine because I had COVID, I recovered, I got tested for antibodies and T cells, and I can prove that I have immunity. that's similar to if I got vaccinated. There's a law professor at George Mason University that's suing his employer for that very reason. He's being required to either get vaccinated or submit to 3 times a week testing. And he's able to prove that he has immunity. So I think there'll be some traction potentially there. And we'll just have to see how these lawsuits play out, see how this evolves here over the next 30 to 90 days.
Yeah, a lot of tricky issues involved here. Paul Seegert is the managing partner at PCS Advisers. It's a California-based healthcare benefits firm.